Welcome to the Scrum Sessions podcast. Here from Dallas, I am Q, and I'm passing the ball to Berlin.
Hey everyone, my name is Gary On, and welcome to the podcast. So today we want to talk about the product owners, and specifically if product owners shouldn't be, or at least act like CEOs of small teams, small companies, right? We've been talking, Q and I, about this thing a little bit, and lately this has been an issue for me because there are, let's say, different interpretations of how you act as a product owner, right? It goes from, on a continuum from kind of being the secretary for somebody else and just like writing user stories to being a full-fledged CEO, having all the power and actually making all the strategic decisions, right? And so we wanted to talk a little bit about it and try to shed some light on, like, are they even appropriate at the extremes? Are there middle points? And in which situation, which context, which one makes sense? So Q, I know you're a super opinionated guy. What's your pet peeve about product owners in this scenario?
Oh, you're calling me a super opinionated guy. Okay. I wouldn't say I'm super, but I am a person of strong belief. So let's put it this way, right, my friend? So here's the deal. One of the things that always frustrated me with product ownership, and it's one of the reasons actually we introduced so much delay in the whole product ownership thing, is most of them have absolutely no authority. And remember from the previous podcast, in my mind, there's 3 attributes for a product owner: empowered, available, and competent. The problem is sometimes they're competent, they are available, but they have no authority. So I think for the most cases, and perhaps I'm wrong, but at least what I've seen for the past couple of years and just seen recently, the product owners are just a bunch of proxies. And sometimes they're hired because, hey, they can write user stories, right? So I think we forgot, like you mentioned, that CEO mentality. And not to say that they are the end of all discussions or they make all the decisions and etc. Because specifically as an organization grow, and we talked about this in a previous podcast, there'll be many layers involved. But even at team level, if you have a product owner that basically gets, software development, gets a mock-up for a screen, and then they write a user story, and the user story is basically the acceptance criteria for the screen, you lost the essence. The essence of that is understanding the outcome, why that screen matters for somebody. And when you lose the essence, you also have trouble prioritizing, you have trouble explaining to the team why that thing has value. And I mention software just because it's easy to imagine. Everybody uses a computer, a screen that does something. But that can apply to anything. So that's why I get my, according to you, strongly opinionated opinions, right? Bad English is, opinionated opinions is really bad English, but just for the fun of it. So the ball is back on your court.
Yeah, and so you touched on a couple of interesting points, and while you were talking, in my mind, I was actually thinking about the opposite of what I would like to see. And so, like, everyone, just imagine, you have a product owner and he comes into the team meetings and, he doesn't have a vision, right? He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't take up some space when dealing with other product owners or with management, right? And he just comes into, let's say, the sprint planning or the refinement and asks the team, what do you guys want to do? Because I'm seeing this kind of stuff, right? This isn't made up. This happens in reality. And for my taste, there is a lack of initiative in there. There's a lack of leadership in there because you as the product owner, you are the product leader, right? Maybe just for a part of the product because you're in a scaled environment, but you actually have to exert some initiative. You have to be a go-getter. You have to make things happen, right? You have to go out to the customer. You have to butt heads with other product owners as well because they have different priorities, right? You're probably competing over internal resources. And I don't say go to war against them because you're all on the same team, but you probably will have to take up some space and be a little bit dominant, right? And so there are a lot of product owners who are like kind of order takers, right? And of course you have to listen to your superiors. That's not what I'm talking about, but they just look at a backlog that maybe they even haven't filled, they don't have a vision, and then they just work off the user stories. Like I think you've mentioned this in prior podcasts, like a business analyst almost. And that to me is not a good product owner.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the whole problem with Scrum product ownership is somehow, and I'm going to use the word diluted, the purpose of having a product owner became diluted. And I don't know, because my other thing, it's one of my pet peeves is, and I may get a lot of people mad after this podcast airs, and feel free to send hate mail, okay? IT doesn't like change. Oh my God, IT doesn't like change, but we have ChatGPT and all sorts of cool stuff coming. No, IT doesn't like change. I seen client after client after client after client, they are still doing business like they did in 1960. And just this week, I actually told somebody, I said, I feel like I'm watching an episode of Bewitched in black and white. If you don't know what it is, go look on YouTube, okay? But here's the deal. You don't really want to change. And that's how the product owner role got diluted. I have nothing against business analysts. I actually have friends who are or were business analysts. Actually, a great Scrum Master, a good friend of mine in Denmark, he started as a business analyst. But the thing is, not by their fault, they are put as a service the backlog. So you have all these user stories, let's keep delivering them. And that also brings another resistance from the team itself, because the team is going to say, why do I need this Scrum thing? All we do is we go through the backlog and get stuff out of the door. So I don't get why you need Scrum. Actually, it doesn't even need to have a name, right? So I see a lot of resistance to change. Yeah, there are some exceptions, but honestly, the vast majority, and I'm sorry to say this, the vast majority does not want to change. And I've seen several companies over and over again spilling that they're agile, they're this, they do Scrum, they do that, or they do Kanban, whatever agile modality you are. But honestly, all they do is the same thing that they have been doing for decades. And they dress it up because they have contractual obligations to say, we're doing this in Scrum or whatever, right? But inside, at the core, they're not. And that's what got the product ownership role diluted to the point that honestly, it doesn't fit what we expect a product owner to be doing.
Interesting. And you were just now saying you don't need a Scrum team, right? And I would actually go further and say, well, you don't need the product owner, because if you think about it, if you go through Scrum training, what are the tasks, what are the responsibilities of a product owner, right? The first one is coming up with a vision. And if you don't have a vision, you're not the source of clarity for the team, right? You're not bringing information from the outside in, you're not filtering it, making sense out of it. Then, yeah, what are you actually accomplishing, right? If you're not building a roadmap based on those insights, on that vision, if you're not only building, but also prioritizing the backlog by impact, why do I actually need a product owner? Because the team with a Scrum Master, they can just work off a backlog, right? If there's just a list, they can just accomplish that. The delivery side, they'll take care of it. But if you don't have that product owner, you will actually lose a lot of productivity, because the team will probably work on stuff that's not really all that impactful, that does not have as much relevance, right? And so the product owner's role is absolutely critical. And if you're not fully rising up to the challenge of that position, you are actually leaving a lot of money and a lot of productivity and a lot of impact on the table.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the things that absolutely drives me mad with people, because once in a while, when Scrum Masters go on vacation, I like to go and be the Scrum Master for that team for a few days, right? I like to do that because otherwise you lose contact with reality, right? You are here an enterprise level coaching executives and all that stuff, and you have no clue what's going on at team level. And I criticize a lot of coaches for doing that because say, well, you know what, Q, that's not my job. I'm not a Scrum Master anymore, right? Oh, you are a Scrum Master. We're all Scrum Masters. That's how we all begun, right? But I like to do that many times. And of course, you don't know the team. You're just kind of parachuting there sometimes for 2-3 days, Once in a while for longer, a week, maybe 2. But most of the time, it's shorter than a week or 2. And many times the team comes to you and said, Q, there's 4 things there in the backlog. The PO is not in here. And honestly, I don't know which one we attack first, right? And then I talk to them and say, well, from a technical point of view and all that stuff, which one you would go? Oh, I'll do that. But again, my question, Q, I don't know which one I do first from the perspective of the product owner. So I've seen a lot of team members that actually have more understanding of outcome than some product owners do. And honestly, I don't think it's the fault of the product owner. The fault is leadership. So, point in case, I cannot help a team figure out which one they should attack first because I don't have a contextual information that they should have had, because a good product owner would understand outcome, would understand the vision and say, guys, this is the vision for this is what I'm going to do this sprint, this is our goal, and etc. And once the team knows that, they can absolutely make decisions without having to go ping the product owner every 5 minutes with questions such as which one do I work first, right?
Absolutely, and I think it's very smart thing what you were describing, to take over the Scrum Master role of different teams as a substitute. And while you were talking, what was coming up for me was that if you think about the following situation, you are in a startup, right, and you're just 5-6 people, and often the CEO will be the product owner. Imagine the CEO product owner would behave like that. That startup would probably be doomed, right? Because, the people would be working in there, the Scrum Master would remove impediments and so on, and everything would be turning along, but, nobody is making sure the priorities are really set. And this is actually what really peeves me. It's that there's often a lack of initiative. There's often a lack of sense of urgency, right? Because you cannot just wait for everything all the time. And all user stories are not created equal, right? There is a reason why we prioritize the backlog, because some things really make a difference and some things really don't matter that much, at least not right now, right? And differentiating between those two is critical for every startup. And in a startup, we would never see a startup succeed if there's nobody that's prioritizing the stuff and that's, showing the vision and then rallying everyone around it. But then there are so many product owners who behave exactly opposite, and it just drives me mad. And sometimes you can that's the good thing about transparency in Scrum, you can just look at a team's product backlog, right? And sometimes I look at it and I just think, okay, you might as well close the team down, because the stuff they're doing is not valuable. The valuable stuff, if there's anything at all, it's at the bottom of the product backlog. And if there's nothing valuable in there, then maybe it's time to close down the team. Or maybe the product owner didn't do enough discovery or didn't initiate enough discovery, right? Didn't go out to the customers, didn't try to find out what they could be building. And so, in a sense, I don't want to be too negative, but it's really disappointing, because think about it, a team costs a lot of money, and a well-performing Scrum team is a beauty to behold, right? And you could be at the steering wheel of this, and you can really do great things. One well-performing Scrum team can really change the world, and if you're in charge of directing it, and you're not doing it, and you're just seeing your task as like the user story writer, it's a shame. It's really a lot of waste.
Yeah, and I think I tend to criticize poor leadership quite a bit. And there is quite a bit of them, unfortunately, right? There are people who definitely got stuck in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, for some reason, even though they are barely in their mid-30s these days. But here's the deal. A lot too is the guilt of the product owner and the Scrum Master. There are people who are put in that position for God knows what reason. I seen many people who got that and they said, oh, I got into this because that's the big thing right now and I can make money working in this. And then there's no real interest or commitment. They equate getting a product backlog out of the door of a mechanical thing like you piling up boxes in a warehouse. And even that requires a lot of skill, right? Because stuff would top over and you're going to put stuff on the back that should have been on the front and all that stuff. But here's the deal. You actually have to understand what your role is. We're talking about product owners, but I have to put the Scrum Masters in the soup here. I've seen Scrum Masters that think that their job is to set up meetings, right? We call Scrum events, but let's face it, they're meetings, right? And they think their job is this. That's it. That's their job. And I often tell them, okay, I honestly don't think I need you. I can make a robot to do that, right? I think ChatGPT probably can set up the meetings for me, right? And then I have product owners the same way. They said, well, I was told that that's what they wanted. And then I start digging and ask, okay, so what does that mean? Well, they wanted this and that, and you do this, and you click that, and da, 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 da. Again, I'm using software because that's my primary stuff, but it applies to anything. And then you say, okay, but what's the benefit for them? Well, they wanted this, and I keep asking, what's the benefit for them? And I keep getting the answer, they want this. So how can you do your job without understanding what the outcome is for a particular thing that you are doing? Because like you mentioned, it costs a lot of money to have a team, right? You can do the math really easily, and it costs a lot of money. Now, if we're creating stuff that's not quite what the user or the stakeholder or the customer wants, you're going to have to redo it. The moment you're redoing it, it's actually costing more money to fix. So you're just inputting more and more and more and more waste. And again, goes to my point. Yes, sometimes you land in a position that you didn't want, but somebody threw you in there. Or many times you decide to go to that position because you think there's earning potential, but you are actually not very good at it. Right? It's like asking me to play the piano. It's going to be a disaster. I can't do that. But hey, I'm going to pretend I can so I make more money. So I see a lot of this also in both product owners and Scrum Masters. Not only leadership fails, but they fail to understand what their role is and just adds to the waste.
Yeah. And so is it fair to say that we come down on saying, yes, the product owner should have at least some entrepreneurial traits, some CEO traits?
Oh, it has to. I mean, you have to understand where's the outcome, what's the vision, what I want with this, right? Because otherwise, you're gonna, and again, I think we probably talk a bit about this during the previous episode, but when you look at this, backlogs tend to get inflated really easily, right? Everybody wants everything. Now, when I teach Impact Map, which I do quite a bit to my product owners, right? I always tell them, okay, so you have all these things you want to do, and here's are the deliverables, right? Did you ever think about, as you are delivering stuff, do you actually go back and reference the goal for that deliverable and say, okay, you know what? We already achieved the goal. You know what? We already achieved the goal, so we don't need this. We absolutely don't need this. So why are we doing that?
And if I can interrupt you, as a product owner, these are actually the best moments for me as a product owner. If I can say, oh, we estimated this to be, let's say, 300 points, but now we found an easier solution, or we already have like 80% of the benefit and we don't need the rest, right? And then I can just go back into the product backlog and kill all the other user stories, right? And we're done and we can move on. This is actually to me, it feels the best, like the best moment as the product owner, because you can actually move on to the next topic because you have a big fat check mark behind this issue, right? And so I love that you say that, because if you don't do that, if you slavishly adhere to the plan, right, almost like project management, oh yeah, we wanted to do all these stories worth 300 points, yeah, but you've already, let's say, gotten 80% of the impact, and now you're just almost wasting energy on the last couple points of impact. And maybe you need to do that, but often you can just skip that altogether and move on to the next topic.
I know, and that's why I even, and against several people, I like to use OKRs, objective and key results, at team level. For the people to understand, okay, our goal to the sprint is to do this. And this is our outcome for the sprint, right? Now, we have to measure if we actually achieve that goal. So a lot of people think, okay, I have my sprint goal. The moment the sprint is over, my goal is done. I disagree with that. The moment the sprint is over, you created the deliverables that you expect to achieve the goal with. But it may take a while to figure out if you actually achieve that goal. So I think we get things a bit scrambled. Sprint goal is not about getting the stuff done in the sprint. A sprint goal is about getting the stuff done in the sprint under a very strict definition of done, so we have quality to it. And when we release that increment, it will still take a little bit of time that we have to observe and measure how those things are going towards actually achieving that initial goal that we had. We don't finish the sprint, press deploy, or if it's a piece of hardware, start selling it or send to the customer, etc. And 30 seconds later, they tell you, oh my God, this is the best thing that we ever invented. No, it takes a certain time. So the sprint goal is a wishful thinking. The vision of the product is wishful thinking. And over a certain amount of time, we have to make sure that numbers will validate that assumption that we have when we set up those goals. And that's what product owners are for. That's what product managers are for. We have to validate things, but the moment you end the sprint, the goal is not done. No, that's the deliverable. And then, over a certain period of time, you're going to notice whether that hypothesis actually realized the way that you wanted to or not. Either way, you learn.
Yeah, that's very good. Okay, I think that's very good. One thing just came to my mind, and that is what happens if you're in a scaled environment, right? And so before I was like referencing the startup where the product owner is also the CEO and should be, on that spectrum that we started at the beginning of this episode, should be all the way to one side because he is the boss of the system. And what happens if we have 5 teams working together? And then I would say, well, since you will have a chief product owner, then you will have to delegate some of that authority of that initiative to that chief product owner, right? So you're going to be reducing your role a little bit because you have to coordinate with those other teams and listen to your chief product owner. But here again, that doesn't mean that you need to go to the other extreme, right? That suddenly, just because you are part of a team of teams, you need to become a note-taker again. That would be totally wrong. Maybe on the spectrum, move a little bit over to the center, a little bit. That doesn't mean you don't need to go out. That doesn't mean you don't need to have a vision. You still need to do everything of that. But like reduce it a little bit, tone it down a little bit. But please, please, please don't say, oh, I'm a chief product owner. We are 5 teams. And then go back to being the note-taker. You still have to take up some room. And a good chief product owner will actually appreciate product owners that are strong, that are opinionated, that are knowledgeable, and that have a good discussion with them.
Yeah, and that's why actually we call them what? The product owner team, right? They should, if there's 5 of them and a chief product owner, they should be all working together. Yeah. Right? The fact that you are a team product owner on the scale of the environment doesn't give you a license to say, you know what? It's whatever the chief product owner told me to do, that's what I'm gonna do it. That's creating a silo, right? So it's you here and the chief product owner there. That's not how it works. You should participate. They may have more exposure that you do to a certain aspect, but it doesn't mean that there's no dialogue, there's no conversation, there's no exchange of views. Quite the opposite. The great thing about working with, in your case, 5 product owners plus the chief product owners, they are different points of view. And that creates a lot of constructive conflict because not everybody thinks the same way, and that's great. Because I hate when everybody agrees with me because it's very dangerous, right? So it's important when you have more people working as part of a product owner team that opinions are slightly divergent, but that's what creates the discussion, the conversation, and that's what leads you to conclusions. Hey, let's try this, let's try that. Or maybe you can say, okay, you know what, guys, I don't really agree with that, but let's try it. You guys want to do it, let's try it. Worst case scenario, I'm wrong, great. If I'm right, great too, we all learn. Either way, we all learn. So we cannot just say, well, we have a chief product owner, it's up to her or him to do whatever. No, it doesn't work like that. It's still a team, and we should be all participating.
Yeah. Very good, man. I think that's it for this episode.
That's it for this episode. From Dallas, I am Q, and the last word, and today was the first word too. It's from my friend Gary on in Berlin.
So thank you everyone for listening. Hope you subscribe to the podcast, and we see you again in a couple of weeks. So take care, stay safe, and see you soon. Bye-bye.